Ambassador Kethvar stood before the Galactic Council's massive viewing screen, his forearms trembling slightly as he watched the blue-green planet rotate slowly in space. Earth. Such a small, unremarkable world in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. Yet the ancient warnings echoed in his mind like thunder. "You seem troubled, Ambassador," said Counselor Rixthon, her crystalline voice cutting through his thoughts. The tall, elegant Altarian moved with fluid grace as she approached the observation deck. Kethvar's mandibles clicked nervously. "The humans have refused our ultimatum again. 3 solar cycles now, and they continue to expand their territory without proper authorization from the Council." "Then we proceed as planned," Rixthon replied coldly. "Admiral Zefkol's fleet is already in position. A simple demonstration of force should bring these primitives to heel." "But the Elder Archives," Kethvar whispered, his voice barely audible. "The warnings—" "Fairy tales and ancient superstition," Rixthon interrupted with a dismissive wave of her crystalline hand. "The Elders vanished 1,000,000 cycles ago. Whatever they left behind holds no relevance to our current situation." Kethvar wanted to argue, but he knew it was futile. The Council had already made its decision. The humans would be taught their place in the galactic hierarchy, just like hundreds of other species before them. Deep within the restricted archives of the ancient Elder homeworld, dust-covered crystalline storage devices held secrets that few living beings had ever accessed. The warnings were clear, written in the flowing script of a civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. "Among all species that walk between stars, one stands apart. Should they ever unite in common cause, should they ever turn their full attention to war, all who oppose them shall know only darkness. Never provoke the children of Sul. Never give them cause to remember what they truly are." But these warnings gathered dust while the galaxy's current powers strutted and planned. Admiral Zefkol commanded the largest fleet the hegemony had assembled in 3 centuries. Over 4,000 vessels of various classes, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking moons. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, stretched over 15 kilometers from bow to stern and housed enough firepower to reduce entire worlds to molten slag. "Status report," the Admiral commanded as he settled into his command throne. The bridge around him hummed with activity as dozens of crew members monitored their instruments. "All fleets report ready, sir," his tactical officer replied. "We've detected minimal human presence in the target system, 3 small patrol vessels and what appears to be a trading station. No significant defensive installations." Zefkol's reptilian features curved into what might have been a smile. The humans had been lucky so far, discovering faster-than-light travel and establishing several colonies before making formal contact with galactic civilization. But luck only lasted so long. "Excellent. Begin the operation. Destroy their patrol vessels as a demonstration, then demand the immediate evacuation of all human colonies in the disputed sectors. They have 6 standard hours to comply before we begin systematic elimination of their infrastructure." The order rippled through the fleet. Massive ships began moving into attack formation, their weapon systems charging with deadly energy. On the human trading station Harmony's Rest, Captain Sarah Chen was enjoying a rare quiet moment in her quarters when the proximity alarms began screaming. She rushed to the command center where her crew was already at their stations. "Report!" she barked. "Massive alien fleet just dropped out of hyperspace," her sensor operator called out. "I'm reading. Jesus, Captain, there are thousands of ships out there. They're moving into attack formation." Chen's blood ran cold. Harmony's Rest was barely armed. A few defensive turrets meant to deter pirates, nothing more. The 3 patrol ships in the system were even less equipped for a major battle. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," she ordered. "Let's see what they want." The main screen flickered to life, showing the scaled features of Admiral Zefkol. When he spoke, His words were translated by the universal communication protocols established during first contact. Humans of this system, you have been judged in violation of galactic hegemony space law. Your unauthorized expansion into controlled sectors ends today. Witness the price of defiance. The transmission cut off just as Chen saw flashes of light in the distance. The patrol ships, Aurora, and Defiance simply vanished. No warning, no chance to surrender. Just there one moment, gone the next. "My God," whispered her communications officer. "They just murdered 200 people." Chen's hands clenched into fists. The third patrol ship, Resolute, was already trying to flee, but alien fighters were closing in fast. She watched helplessly as they tore it apart piece by piece. "You have 6 standard hours to evacuate all human colonies in sectors 7 through 12, came another transmission from the alien admiral. "Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of all human presence in these systems. This is your only warning." The channel closed again, leaving Chen and her crew in stunned silence. Meanwhile, on Earth, the emergency session of the United Nations was already underway. Representatives from every nation sat in tense discussion as Admiral Rebecca Martinez briefed them on the situation. "The attack occurred 17 hours ago," Martinez reported grimly. 3 patrol vessels destroyed without warning, over 400 souls lost. The alien fleet is demanding complete withdrawal from 12 systems where we've established colonies. Secretary General Kumar leaned forward. "What are our options, Admiral? Militarily, we're outgunned by a massive margin. Our entire space navy consists of 47 vessels, most of which are exploratory or light patrol craft. Intelligence estimates the alien force at over 4,000 ships." Murmurs of dismay rippled through the assembly. Representative Thompson from the North American Federation stood up. "Then we negotiate. Find out what they really want. Make some kind of deal." "With respect, sir," Martinez replied, "they've already shown us what they want. Complete submission, and they opened negotiations by committing mass murder." In the archives beneath Geneva, Dr. Elena Vasquez was working frantically through ancient files that had been largely ignored since first contact with galactic civilization. Most of the elder ruins found on various worlds had been dismissed as archaeological curiosities, but something about the current crisis had triggered her memory. "There!" she exclaimed, pulling up a translation from the Kepler 442 ruins. "Listen to this. The sons and daughters of Terra possess a strength that sleeps until awakened. In peace, they are merchants and explorers. In war, they become something else entirely. No force in the galaxy can stand against united humanity driven by righteous fury." Her colleague, Dr. James Harrison, looked skeptical. "Elena, you're reading too much into ancient texts. These elders probably never even encountered humans." "But what if they did?" Elena insisted. "What if there's some kind of genetic memory, some evolutionary trigger we don't understand? The elders vanished mysteriously. What if they knew something about human potential that we've forgotten?" Before Harrison could respond, an urgent message appeared on their screens. The president was calling an emergency briefing for all department heads. The time for academic speculation was over. Back in space, Captain Chen had managed to contact Earth and relay the alien ultimatum. Now she waited with her crew, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. The aliens had made one critical error in their calculations. They had killed humans without provocation. They had threatened human children on those colonies, and throughout history, there was one lesson that had been written in blood again and again: never back a human into a corner. On Earth, the response was swift and unified in a way that surprised even humanity itself. Political differences evaporated overnight. Ancient rivalries were set aside. Every nation, every corporation, every individual seemed to understand instinctively that this was a moment that would define their species' future. President Carter addressed the world from the UN building. My fellow humans, we face an unprecedented threat. An alien force has murdered our people and demands our submission. They believe we are weak because we are few. They believe we will surrender because we are outnumbered. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The president paused, her voice growing harder. Effective immediately, all of humanity's resources are dedicated to a single purpose. We will show these aliens and anyone else watching that humanity does not kneel. We do not surrender, and we do not forget those who have fallen. In the depths of space, Admiral Zefkol was pleased with 3 months had passed since the ultimatum, and Admiral Zefkol was beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. The humans had not evacuated their colonies as demanded. Instead, something far more troubling was happening. Admiral, his intelligence officer reported, we're detecting massive industrial activity throughout human space. Their manufacturing output has increased by over 3,000% in just 12 weeks. Zefkol's scaled brow furrowed. Impossible. No species can scale production that rapidly. Sir, our long-range sensors are showing construction of what appear to be shipyards in every human system. They're building something, and they're building it fast. The Admiral studied the data flowing across his screens. The humans had somehow converted civilian mining operations, manufacturing plants, and even asteroid processing facilities into military production centers. It was as if their entire civilization had transformed overnight into a war machine. On Mars, Dr. Jennifer Walsh stood in the cavernous underground facility that had once been a civilian research complex. Now it hummed with the constant activity of weapons research and development. The transformation had been staggering. Within weeks, every major corporation had retooled their operations for military production. "Status report, Dr. Walsh," called General Patricia Hayes as she entered the lab. "We've cracked their shield technology, General. Turns out their energy barriers are vulnerable to quantum tunneling projectiles. We're already mass-producing the new ammunition." General Hayes nodded grimly. "Good. What about the ship designs?" "Even better news there. We've completely redesigned our approach to space combat. While they build massive, heavily armored ships, we're going for speed and maneuverability. Our new fighter class can outrun anything in their fleet." "And the pilot training program?" "Ahead of schedule. Turns out humans have a natural talent for three-dimensional combat that other species lack. Our pilots are adapting to zero-gravity warfare faster than our instructors believed possible." Unknown to the hegemony forces, humanity possessed something that galactic civilization had lost long ago: the ability to innovate rapidly under pressure. While other species relied on millennia-old ship designs and battle tactics, humans were reinventing warfare from the ground up. Captain Marcus Rodriguez had been a civilian freight pilot just 4 months ago. Now he commanded a squadron of the new Raptor-class fighters, ships that had been designed, tested, and put into production in record time. "All right, people," he said to his pilots as they prepared for their first real engagement. "Remember what we learned in training. The aliens think big and slow. We think small and fast. They want to slug it out with heavy weapons. We hit them where they don't expect it and vanish before they can respond." His squadron consisted of 12 pilots, all former civilians who had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. The plan was simple: infiltrate the alien fleet's perimeter, gather intelligence, and test their new equipment against real enemy vessels. As they approached the edge of the system where Admiral Zefkol's fleet waited, Rodriguez felt a familiar calm settle over him. It was the same feeling he'd had as a child playing video games, the same focus that had made him an excellent freight pilot. Except now, the stakes were the survival of his species. "Contact!" called his sensor operator. "3 alien patrol ships moving in standard formation." Rodriguez smiled grimly. Standard formation. Predictable. The aliens had been using the same tactics for so long they couldn't conceive of anything different. "Engage," he ordered. What followed lasted less than 30 seconds. The human fighters appeared on the alien sensors just long enough to launch their new quantum-tunneling missiles, then vanished again using stealth technology that the hegemony didn't know existed. By the time the alien ships realized they were under attack, their shields had been bypassed and their hulls were venting atmosphere. Admiral Zefkol received the report with growing alarm. "Explain to me how 3 of our patrol vessels were destroyed by ships we never detected." "Sir, we are analyzing the wreckage now, but early reports suggest the humans have developed weapons that ignore our shields entirely. Their ships also appear to have some kind of cloaking technology. This was unprecedented. No species had developed new military technology so rapidly. Most civilizations took centuries to make meaningful advances in warfare. Increase patrols. I want constant surveillance of all approach vectors, and get me a communication link to the Hegemony High Command. They need to understand what we're dealing with here." But Admiral Zefkol's problems were just beginning. Across human space, something extraordinary was happening. The species that had spent centuries exploring and trading was remembering skills their ancestors had possessed, but never fully utilized. Commander Lisa Park had been an archaeologist before the war. Her specialty was human military history, particularly the rapid technological advancement during Earth's 2 world wars. Now she found herself leading a team of scientists and engineers in what they called the Innovation Project. "The pattern is clear," she explained to a room full of military leaders via holographic conference. "Throughout human history, our greatest technological leaps have come during periods of existential threat. War drives innovation in ways that peace never can." Admiral Martinez leaned forward. "What are you saying, Commander?" "I'm saying that what we're experiencing now isn't unusual for humanity. It's what we do. We adapt. We overcome. We find ways to turn disadvantages into strengths." Park gestured to a display showing production statistics. "Look at these numbers. We've gone from 47 ships to over 800 in 3 months. Our industrial capacity has expanded beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen." "But can we win?" asked General Hayes bluntly. Park's expression grew hard. "General, they killed our people without warning. They threatened our children. They think they can make us surrender through intimidation." She paused, looking around the room. "They've awakened something that has been sleeping for decades. They've reminded humanity why we survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other catastrophe this universe has thrown at us. We don't just survive, we adapt, and then we thrive." The first major battle came sooner than either side expected. A hegemony task force attempting to attack the human colony on Kepler 442b suddenly found itself facing a coordinated response unlike anything in galactic military history. Captain Chen, now commanding the rebuilt and heavily armed Harmony's Rest, coordinated the defense from the system's asteroid belt. Around her, dozens of ships that had been mining vessels just months ago now bristled with weapons and defensive systems. "Enemy fleet dropping out of hyperspace," her tactical officer reported. 60 ships, various classes. "Signal the fleet," Chen ordered. "Execute Plan Thunderstrike." What the aliens saw defied their understanding of space combat. Instead of meeting them in traditional formation, the human ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Small, fast vessels darted between their ranks, launching missiles and disappearing. Larger ships appeared from behind asteroids, fired devastating volleys, then retreated before return fire could be coordinated. But the most shocking development was the asteroids themselves. The humans had turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapons platform. Hidden installations opened fire with kinetic weapons that hurled chunks of rock at significant fractions of light speed. The hegemony fleet found themselves caught in a crossfire from enemies they couldn't see or target effectively. "This is impossible!" shouted the alien task force commander as his flagship shuddered under repeated impacts. "They're using the entire system as a weapon." Within 2 hours, the Hegemony Task Force was in full retreat, having lost over half their ships to an enemy they barely managed to hit in return. Admiral Zefkol received the battle report in stunned silence. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. And they were doing it in ways that violated every principle of accepted galactic warfare. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "I've been analyzing their combat patterns. They're not following any known strategic doctrine. It's as if they're creating entirely new forms of warfare." "How is that possible?" I don't know, sir. But there's something else. We've intercepted some of their communications. They're not just building ships anymore. They're building infrastructure. Massive space-based manufacturing complexes, automated mining operations, research facilities. It's like they're preparing for a war that could last centuries. Zefkol felt a chill run down his spine. "Get me a direct line to the Council. We need reinforcements, massive reinforcements." But unknown to the Admiral, the Council was dealing with their own growing problems. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Human trade vessels had vanished from hegemony space, but not in the way expected. They hadn't fled. They had transformed into spy ships, intelligence-gathering platforms, and in some cases, commando vessels conducting surgical strikes against hegemony installations. Ambassador Kethvar stood once again before the massive viewing screen, but now his 4 arms were shaking for different reasons. The latest intelligence reports painted a picture that chilled him to his core. "The humans have established contact with 17 separate species that have grievances against the hegemony," he reported to the assembled council. "They're offering military technology and alliance agreements." Councillor Rixthon's crystalline features had lost their earlier confidence. "That's impossible. No species has ever successfully organized resistance against hegemony authority." "The humans have, Councillor. More than that, they're succeeding. 3 hegemony fleets have been defeated in the last month alone. Our forces are reporting unprecedented casualties." "Then we escalate," Rixthon declared, though her voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Deploy the full 3rd battle group. Show these humans what real power looks like." Kethvar wanted to object, wanted to remind them of the ancient warnings that now seemed more prophetic than ever. But he knew the Council was too proud to listen. They would continue escalating until something broke. What they didn't realize was that something already had broken. The hegemony's perception of human capabilities had shattered completely. What they thought would be a simple police action had become a galactic war, and for the first time in their history, they were losing. On Earth, President Carter stood before the United Nations one final time before the next phase of the operation began. Behind her, displays showed the current state of human space, hundreds of worlds now bustling with industrial activity, fleets of ships that hadn't existed 6 months ago, and a level of technological advancement that seemed almost impossible. "My fellow humans," she began, "we have shown the galaxy that we will not be intimidated. We will not be conquered. But now comes the hard part. The enemy is bringing their full might to bear against us. They think numbers alone will decide this war." She paused, looking directly into the cameras that broadcast her words to every human world. "They're about to learn why the ancients called us the children of Terra. Why species that vanished 1,000,000 years ago left warnings about provoking humanity. We're not just defending our homes anymore. We're defending our right to exist as free beings in this galaxy." Operation Prometheus begins in 72 hours. All ships, all personnel, all resources are now committed to total victory. We will show them what humanity truly is when we stop holding back. As the transmission ended, Admiral Zefkol was receiving his own final orders from Hegemony High Command. The largest fleet in galactic history was being assembled, over 12,000 ships from across the hegemony's member species. Neither side fully understood what they had unleashed. The galaxy was about to witness something it hadn't seen since the Elder Wars, a conflict that would reshape civilization itself, the initial operation's success. The human patrol vessels had been eliminated with barely a shot fired in return. Soon, the primitive humans would realize their place in the galactic order and submit properly. He had no way of knowing that his simple demonstration of force had just triggered something that the galaxy hadn't seen in over 1,000,000 years. The sleeping giant was begin. The final battle began not with grand fleets meeting in open space, but with something far more terrifying: silence. Admiral Zefkol commanded the largest armada in galactic history, over 12,000 ships spread across 17 different star systems, all converging on human space. The plan was simple: overwhelming force applied simultaneously across multiple fronts. No species could withstand such an assault. "All fleets report ready, Admiral," his communications officer announced. "Operation Final Authority is prepared to commence on your command." Zefkol studied the tactical displays showing his massive fleet formations. After months of surprising defeats, the hegemony had finally brought enough force to end this rebellion once and for all. "Begin the operation. All fleets advance to their target systems." The response was immediate and horrifying. As the hegemony fleets moved into attack positions, they found nothing. No human ships, no defensive platforms. The colonies appeared abandoned, space stations were dark, and entire systems seemed devoid of life. "Sir," his sensor officer called out nervously, "we're not detecting any human ships in the target systems. None at all." Impossible. Intelligence reports indicated massive defensive preparations. "The installations are here, Admiral, but they appear to be automated. And, sir, we're detecting some kind of massive energy buildup from the direction of the Sol system." Before Zefkol could respond, every sensor screen on his flagship went white. Deep in the Sol system, humanity had been preparing for this moment since the war began. What the aliens hadn't understood was that human innovation went far beyond simple ships and weapons. They had been rebuilding reality itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the archaeologist who had first discovered the Elder Warnings, now stood in the command center of humanity's greatest achievement, the Prometheus Array. Built into the asteroid belt around Sol, it was part weapon, part manufacturing facility, and part something else entirely. "Final system checks complete," reported the lead engineer. "All quantum resonance chambers are at full power. Stellar collection arrays are operating at maximum efficiency." General Hayes, now overall commander of human military forces, looked at the readings with a mixture of awe and terror. "Dr. Vasquez, are you certain this will work?" Elena nodded grimly. The Elder Archives were very specific. This is how they dealt with galactic threats. They didn't just defeat their enemies, they made sure those enemies could never threaten anyone again. And the risk to our own people? Minimal. The wave propagation will follow the quantum signature locks we've established on all hegemony vessels. Our ships are configured to be invisible to the effect. Hayes took a deep breath. "Then God help us all. Initiate the Prometheus Protocol." Across human space, installations that had taken months to construct and had consumed the resources of multiple star systems suddenly activated. What the aliens thought were defensive positions revealed their true nature. They were components of a weapons system that spanned multiple solar systems. The Prometheus Array fired. What followed defied every principle of known physics. The quantum resonance wave that erupted from Sol didn't travel at light speed. It traveled through quantum space, hitting every hegemony fleet simultaneously, regardless of distance. Ships that had been preparing to attack human colonies suddenly found their molecular bonds destabilizing. Admiral Zefkol watched in horror as vessels throughout his fleet simply began to come apart. not exploding, dissolving. Metal turned to dust, energy systems collapsed, and 12,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy became clouds of component atoms in the space of minutes. "Evacuation pods!" he screamed, but even those were affected. The quantum wave was targeted specifically at the exotic materials used in hegemony technology. Only basic chemical compounds remained stable. In those final moments, as his flagship disintegrated around him, Admiral Zefkol finally understood the true meaning of the ancient warnings. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced weapons. They had learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of reality itself. The effect wasn't limited to ships. Across hegemony space, every military installation, every weapons factory, every strategic resource suddenly ceased to exist. In a matter of hours, the most powerful military force in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors floating in escape pods. But the true horror was yet to come. President Carter's voice echoed across every communication channel in the galaxy as she addressed not just humanity, but every species that could receive the transmission. "People of the galaxy, this is President Carter of the Human Federation. For months, the hegemony has attempted to subjugate humanity through violence and intimidation. They murdered our people without warning. They threatened our children. They believed their superior numbers would ensure victory." The transmission paused as images filled screens across known space. Images of the hegemony's vast fleets simply ceasing to exist. They were wrong. What you have witnessed today is not the full extent of human capability. It is merely a demonstration. The weapon we use today was designed specifically to target hegemony military assets. It could just as easily target their civilian infrastructure, their worlds, their entire civilization. In the hegemony's capital system, Counselor Rixthon stared at the transmission in growing terror. Around her, other council members were receiving reports that defied comprehension. Their entire military, ships, bases, weapons, had simply vanished. However, President Carter continued, humanity chooses mercy over annihilation. The hegemony's military capacity has been eliminated, but their people remain untouched. We offer them the same choice they offered us: surrender. The terms that followed redefined galactic politics. The hegemony would disband. Occupied worlds would be granted independence. War crimes tribunals would be established. And most significantly, a new galactic government would be formed, one based on cooperation rather than domination. To any who might consider challenging these terms, Carter's voice grew harder, remember what you have witnessed today. Remember that humanity showed restraint. Remember that we could have chosen total destruction, but did not. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness. Do not repeat the hegemony's error. 3 days after the Prometheus Protocol ended the war, Ambassador Kethvar found himself in an ironic position. The former hegemony diplomat was now part of a delegation seeking audience with human leadership. The meeting took place on Harmony's Rest, the same station where Captain Chen had first witnessed the murder of human patrol ships. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, greeted the delegation personally. "Ambassador Kethvar, I remember you from the first transmissions. You seemed reluctant about the war." Kethvar's 4 arms trembled as he spoke. "Admiral, I tried to warn the Council about the Elder Archives, the ancient warnings about humanity. They would not listen." "The Elder Warnings," Chen mused. "We've been researching those ourselves. Tell me, what exactly did they say?" "That humanity was different. That among all species in the galaxy, you alone possess the capacity for unlimited adaptation. That in peace, you would be explorers and traders. But in war," he paused, struggling to find words. "In war, you would become something beyond comprehension." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "The elders were right about one thing, Ambassador. We are different. but perhaps not in the way they thought. She gestured to the viewport, where construction crews, both human and alien, were working together to rebuild what the war had damaged. Most species seem to reach a certain level of development and then stagnate. They become comfortable with their technology, their society, their place in the universe. Humans, we can't seem to stop changing. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every setback forces us to innovate. The war didn't make us into monsters, Ambassador. It made us into what we've always had the potential to become. Kethavar looked puzzled. Then why didn't you destroy us completely? You had the power. Chen's expression grew serious. Because that's not what we are. Yes, we have the capacity for total destruction. But we also have something else. The ability to choose not to use it. That's what the elders really feared, I think. Not that we would become destroyers, but that we would become judges. In the months that followed, the galaxy underwent the most dramatic transformation in its recorded history. The hegemony's collapse left a power vacuum that dozens of species rushed to fill, but human diplomats were there to guide the process. The new galactic cooperative was built on principles of voluntary association and mutual benefit. The technological advances forced by the war didn't disappear with peace. Instead, they were turned toward exploration, terraforming, and improving life for all species. Human shipyards that had produced warships now built colony vessels and research stations. The quantum technologies that had destroyed the hegemony fleet were adapted for faster-than-light communication and transportation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now director of the new Institute for Galactic Archaeology, made a discovery that shed light on the ancient mysteries. Deep in the Elder archives, she found the final entries of their civilization. The children of Terra have awakened, the last Elder record stated. As we foresaw, they have passed the great test. They possess the power to destroy, but chose instead to build. The galaxy is safe in their hands. Our watch is ended. The elders, it turned out, had not vanished mysteriously. They had simply moved on, confident that their successors would eventually emerge. The warnings they left behind weren't threats, they were tests, and humanity had passed. Admiral Zefkol, one of the few hegemony officers to survive the final battle, found himself in an unexpected position. Rather than being imprisoned or executed, he was offered a place in the new Galactic Cooperative's peacekeeping force. Human leaders believed that former enemies who had witnessed their power firsthand would be the most effective advocates for peace. Why? He asked Admiral Chen during their first meeting since the war's end. Why show mercy to those who would have destroyed you? Chen considered the question carefully. Because that's what separated us from the hegemony in the first place. You ruled through fear and superior force. We choose to lead through example and cooperation. Besides, she added with a slight smile, the galaxy is a big place. There's room for everyone to find their own way. As news of humanity's victory and subsequent restraint spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. Species that had been enemies for millennia began to work together. The example of human mercy toward their defeated foes inspired others to reconsider old grudges and ancient conflicts. The human approach to galactic governance was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of imposing a single system on all species, they encouraged diversity and self-determination. Instead of demanding tribute or submission, they offered partnership and mutual benefit. The result was a period of peace and prosperity unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Years later, when young beings of various species learned about the Great War in their history classes, they would struggle to understand how anyone could have been foolish enough to provoke humanity. The evidence of human restraint and wisdom was all around them, in the peaceful cities, the thriving colonies, the cooperative research stations that dotted the galaxy. But the teachers would always end their lessons with the same warning that the elders had left behind. Never forget that humanity's greatest strength is not their technology or their military might. It is their ability to choose mercy when they have the power to choose vengeance. This choice, more than anything else, is what makes them worthy to lead. The galaxy had learned the truth that the elders had tried to preserve, that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when not to use that ability. Humanity had proven themselves worthy guardians of galactic civilization not by conquering it, but by choosing to serve it. And in the depths of space, on worlds where the elder ruins stood as monuments to a vanished civilization, the ancient warnings still glowed with soft light, no longer warnings of danger, but confirmations of hope. The children of Terra had indeed awakened, and the galaxy was safe, ing to stir, and when it fully awakened, the stars themselves would tremble.